In this episode of Shutter Nonsense, we're joined by photographer and patron of the show, Barb Livieri, for a candid conversation about photography workshops, the good, the bad, and everything in between. We cover how to prepare, what to watch out for, and why mindset matters. If you're thinking about joining a workshop, this episode is packed with insight. After the episode, join us over on Patreon as a free or paid member to join in on the conversation. Now, let's get into it. Gotta get myself in my mind space. It's been,
I know, you got to get that voice back.
It's been a couple weeks. I gotta remember what the heck I'm doing as co-host here. So maybe we'll leave this random chatter in, or maybe not. But welcome to episode, I don't know, of Shutter Nonsense. I think it's 12. I don't have that in
11, I think, 11? According to our notes.
Oh, yeah. Murray was number 10. So this would be number 11 for what it's worth. Not that it really matters. So anyways, we have a special guest today. Barb, you got to help me out with your last name. I think I know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to let you do the honors just in case.
We just say Livieri. Everybody else pronounces it differently.
I usually think Livieri, so too far
Livieri,
off.
Yeah.
So anyway,
now the Italians will pronounce it somewhere different, but that's fine.
Livieri.
Livieri, yeah.
So we've got Barb Livieri on the episode today. We're going to be talking about some stuff with workshops, more from a participant standpoint than a leader standpoint. Actually, Barb, you're one of the first ones to give us feedback on episode 1, and it is around like, hey, I loved the episode, but it would be great to hear it more from the perspective of somebody attending a workshop as opposed to somebody leading. Totally valid. So that's why we thought we'd pull you in today. Before we get into the juicy bits of this episode, just quick status updates from me and Jeffrey. Barb, I know you said you haven't done a whole lot photography related other than what you're always out there doing and sharing people's work. And part of the reason Barb's on here is because much like Murray bribed me by saying I looked slim down and fit, Barb has been a huge supporter of my work and plenty of others as well, but she's bought both of my folios. She's pre-ordered my box set. So what better way to reward her for that than being a sucker for money and
put her on the spot, right?
Inviting
her
in
on a podcast. See what happens.
Right. But no, Barb has been, Barb, you've been absolutely fantastic. You're one of our first, I think you were our second or third supporters of the podcast on Patreon. So that's one of the things I've always just been so impressed with you as a person is anybody and everybody, big names, small names, anywhere in between, you are out there supporting people full-heartedly and full-throatedly. So definitely appreciate that.
I'll add to that to say definitely follow Barb on Instagram because I learn about a lot of photographers and things going on through her. Her support for photographers and communities, amazing. She's always sharing work and not just every single random share. It's usually stuff I feel like she's thought there was something special about it, so it's not just random shares. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely add on to the Barb's so supportive in the community. And I know when Michael and I were talking about this workshops, and we'd seen her comment, but she was definitely the top one to come because I know you do some workshops and stuff like that. So looking forward to having you on the show.
Yeah. Indeed. Kiss our ass enough and you might get on the podcast yourself. Join our Patreon.
My head gets 12.
In all seriousness, just shifting. Well, I almost said it. Pivoting.
Oh, no.
Pivoting. We're pivoting.
That's a trademarked...
pivoting away from the wonders of Barb. Just quick updates from my end. Not a whole lot to share. This is actually our first recording in 2 weeks. Jeffrey and I both had some trips that pulled us away, so we took a break for the first time since we started this little crazy podcast journey. I was out in Colorado for door to door. It was 13 days, actually in Colorado for about 11 of those. I was absolutely exhausted by the end of it, but it was a good trip. Don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. Jeffrey and I might be cooking up something a little different for sharing some more in-depth thoughts on each of our trips. And then Jeffrey, where were you at? I know it's not Blackwater Falls, but as we were just joking,
not Blackwater Falls, but it was West Virginia. The name of the park. So you've got the right state. New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia is where I was at. I was there about 4 days, but a good trip. But yeah, it was nice to be out. Yeah.
See, at least I know there's water in the name. I just get the wrong type of...
Yep, just wrong place. And I lead workshops in the Blackwater Falls area, so I know that's why it comes to your head. But no, I was exploring a new to me area to explore. So
fantastic. And I've got my brand new fancy Colorado hat on, so, that's my big takeaway from the trip, right?
Yeah, I missed the memo on we could wear hats.
I primarily wear it because my studio light is kind of glary, so yeah, whatever. Anyways, I got to look pretty and see. So the episode of this topic, the topic of this episode, as we already kind of briefly touched on, is workshops from an attendee perspective or prospective attendee perspective as well. Perspective and prospective. I'm making this really confusing. Barb gave that great feedback on episode 1, and our intent wasn't really to do that first episode from the attendee viewpoint, but definitely I think it's a worthy topic to discuss. I've attended workshops in the past and conferences. Jeffrey, I don't know if you've ever attended.
Most of my past workshops have been much more around the portrait world,
Gotcha.
but I've done a couple intensive workshops around studio lighting and senior portraits and everything like that. So I've done workshops in the past, but more in that genre of world.
Gotcha. So yeah, I've got some experience with it. Granted, it's been several years at this point. The last conference I did in the field was out of Chicago's Yosemite conference in 2020, which I've alluded to a few times before, which was absolutely fantastic. It wasn't a quote unquote proper workshop. The last workshop I attended would have been 2019. So it has been a while for me. Barb, I know you've attended a few, and before we get into really what we want to talk about is kind of like from that attendee standpoint, how can you go into a workshop with the right frame of mind and open to feedback and everything? But as we were discussing when I first reached out to you, Barb, on Instagram, I know you've had some varied experiences, both good and bad. So I thought maybe, I don't want the episode to wrap up on a potentially sad note around the benefits of workshops. So I thought maybe we could kick off there and kind of, certainly share your good experiences and the types of value you got out of those good workshops. But I think it's also important to talk about the other side, the dark side of workshops. And I know as workshop leaders and talking to other photographers, there's, muttering in the background and behind the scenes about some folks that are leading and charging for workshops, but really they're kind of using it for their own personal benefit of like unspoken, like pay for my trip and come out with me and then I'll kind of ignore you, or not actually doing any teaching or anything like that. So again, Barb, you had some interesting input on that, and I don't want to get into specifics. By all means, if it was a great experience, share who, what, when, where. But for the negatives, we're not here to throw anybody specifically under the bus, but certainly feel free to share your thoughts and insights on that. So I'll toss it over to you, Barb.
Yeah, after you asked me, I started thinking back how many different workshops I've been on. I did 2 out of Chicago's, and those were fantastic. I did 2 private workshops where both of those were great as well, David Thompson and Adam Gibbs. And then I did 2 workshops for small, like the ones that you guys do with. We only had three participants at each, and that was where one of them was not so good. I mean, it wasn't awful. It wasn't horrible. Nobody got killed or nobody got sick. No,
You set a high bar there with it. Nobody got killed.
It
wasn't-
5 stars. Nobody died.
Yes.
nobody died. Yeah, it's good. Okay. But some of the I think it was, and I like to blame the other person, but I started thinking about it, and had I done my own research properly, I think I knew a little bit about this person, but not enough. And it just was not a right fit for me.
Yeah.
The other 2 guys, or one was a lady and the other guy, the other lady just ate him up, ate it up. And she was an older lady. And I'm looking like an old lady myself, but and the guy that was there was just loving it. And I'm sitting back going, why don't I fit in with this? I learned a lot. It was still a lot of fun. It wasn't all bad. It's just kind of like the attitude didn't really fit with what I think a workshop leader should be. A little bit of arrogance there, and a lot of arrogance, I should say.
I laugh knowing who you're talking about. I can't help but laugh.
And a lot of people who, if anybody listens and are listening to this, they'll probably know too. But it wasn't bad, awful. But the other ones were great. And then I remembered I did another private back when I first started. It was in Savannah. I had wanted to go to Savannah all my life, and I had been there twice and not with the camera, and I found these people online, didn't know anything about them, and it ended up being a really good experience. So, yeah, I think going in, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know why you're taking a workshop. What are your motivations? Are you there to see a location? Are you there to be with a certain photographer? Are you there because you want to learn a certain technique or learn a genre or something different than what you're used to? So, and then you got to know what's your budget? Mm-hmm. What are your time constraints? Do you have the money for some of this? Because let's face it, they're not cheap. Yeah. And they're only getting more and more expensive. I remember seeing the Out of Chicago and Moab. They were advertising that heavily. And then after the fact, they had all the YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. I just was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I started looking on their website and I went, oh my gosh, maybe not. Yeah. It was quite expensive. And at the time, I couldn't really afford it, but
that's what kidneys are for.
Yeah, right? I got a couple of those.
Who's using both, really? I mean, come on.
I know. Both. Nah.
So it sounds like since we initially spoke, you've kind of, upon further reflection, kind of come down off the cliff's edge a little bit on the bad experience. And I think what you said is, maybe not fully understanding / digging into what that workshop would be like, or even just reflecting upon what you knew of the person and how that might translate to a workshop. And I'll say that's one thing for me. What I consider my first real, like in the field, nature photography workshop was in 2018 at Grand Teton. And ironically, I was in a Facebook group and I saw somebody post about it and the name rung a bell. I was like, oh, I know that person. It turned out to not be that person, which was kind of ironic. Fortunately, it was a really good workshop, but there were things, I read through the information, but I can't recall at this point. I either didn't have a full understanding of the physical requirements, or maybe it wasn't quite clear. Obviously, I didn't actually know who the leader was, and it actually was two workshop leaders, similar to what Jeffrey and I did in Smoky Mountains. And they were younger guys. I mean, they were basically college-age guys. And it was a fantastic experience. I would say, the physical aspect of it was far, far, far worse. And I think, Barb, it was you that I was chatting with yesterday again, where you were making the joke about it's like childbirth. You go through this painful, awful experience, and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, it was so great. I want to do that again. And that's kind of how that experience.
Too fun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That Grand Teton, we did one hike in particular. I didn't think I was going to get through it, but the workshop leaders split up and one hung back with me and the other woman that was struggling with the climb and the boulder scrambling a little bit. And boy, I wanted to murder both of them at the time, but it ended up being a fantastic experience. And, it also kind of proved to me that I could do something like that I didn't necessarily think I would have been able to. If I'd known about that particular hike going into it, how difficult it would be, I may not have even signed up, and I would have missed an overall fantastic experience. But, again, that's kind of an experience or an example of not really knowing exactly what I was getting myself into. I didn't ask any questions of the workshop leaders going into it. I just signed up and said, hey, let's go. Now I would know things like they didn't have the permits that they should have had. I had no idea that was even a thing. So again, one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. And that was feedback I gave after the fact. It was a great experience. I might have been a little grumpy still about some of the hikes, but I again, maybe a little more bluntly than I should have, but it was also valid. I would have been super pissed if I'd shown up and gone on this workshop and then the second day in, they'd been stopped by a ranger and permits were checked and we all got kicked out of the park. So it's things like that people may not necessarily think about. Having the insurance and liability, which goes in a national park or national, or I guess federal land, public land, goes into it. If you've got the permit, part of that is you have to prove you've got the insurance and liability coverage and everything. What are their viewpoints on leave no trace and nature first? I've seen some behaviors that were fairly misaligned with my personal viewpoints on not damaging the ecosystem and, somebody stomping small trees down because they were in the way and things like that. So, yeah, I think again, circling back to what you said, Barb, like having that, we talk about curiosity in the field with photography, but also kind of that curiosity with a workshop, like, oh, maybe I should go look at other workshops that are out there and see the details they're listing. And, oh, look, they're talking about they're fully permitted and fully insured. I never even thought about that. Let me go back to this one that I'm interested in and see, you know, what falls into that. But also, again, to your point, Barb, like you kind of knew or at least knew the person's personality of the one workshop that you wanted to attend, maybe taking that step back and, you know, the workshop sounds great, but is this a personality that maybe I'm not really going to jive with or whatever, or ask other people that maybe have attended if you know some folks and get their feedback. So anyways, I don't want it to, like I said, I don't want this to be a negative thing. And partly selfishly is obviously Jeffrey and I have a vested interest in trying to sell workshops. But also, you know, I've attended workshops and I truly have gotten tremendous value out of them. For me, it was very much around when I started out, and I think I've talked about this, like I didn't have experience camping. I didn't really have experience hiking in the wilderness or anything like that. So, and I wasn't familiar with where to go even on a big road trip and, you know, really how to research it fully and properly and everything. So I wanted the workshops kind of from a standpoint of help me get to a great location, show me around that great location. And oh, by the way, if I'm tent camping for the first time, how do I put this thing up? You know, what do I do? What do I need for a hike? What preparation should I take and everything like that? So that was kind of where I was coming at as well. So I think, I don't know, Barb, anything else to share? Jeffrey, any thoughts on the kind of pros and cons of it?
Well, not really on the pros and cons, but I'd be curious, Barb, what do you think are some, if you're looking at a workshop instructor, sort of unknown, you're not, you know, you've seen their ad on Facebook, or maybe you've seen their images on Instagram or something like that. What do you look for? Where do you go to start to do your research? It sounds like your experience was maybe I should have researched that person a little more. You've probably learned from that. So I guess what would be your process if you were recommending to somebody considering a workshop? What steps should they take? What would you look for when you can't necessarily meet the person up front?
I think first of all you got to go to their website. Anybody worth their salt is going to have a website. If they don't, then you probably don't need to take a workshop from them. And like you said, Michael, if they are insured and licensed and everything, they would have that listed somewhere. I think just doing your research, reading about what they, you know, if they're advertising it, I don't know. I'm guessing there are review places like Yelp. I think you can look up. I haven't had to do that. I haven't really looked up reviews myself because I just kind of, everybody I've taken a workshop with, I've known are very reputable, except for that one person. And even that guy's done workshops forever. Yeah. It's just, you know,
it wasn't the right
I wasn't worried about it. Yeah. And then, I don't want to get into that. But look at their, you know, if they have a YouTube video or YouTube, absolutely research that. Look at their social media, find out if there are any in the field videos. A lot of times if they're on workshops, they'll take a little, you know, if they're not photographing, they may just, you know, sneak in a little quick phone video or just to show where they're at and what they're doing, and email them. I know before COVID, that's when I was starting to look into doing a proper workshop, and I'm just enamored by M. Gibbs. There's no doubt about it. I love the photography, the trees, and it, you know. And so I emailed him. I said, "Listen, I'm looking at your workshops. What is this? What is that?" And he wrote back. So that's what you need to do is just ask them, and you know, is it a right fit? I think you can. Most people will be able to figure it out.
Well, and even just sending that simple email, and sorry, just quick point.
No, you're good.
You send that simple email, and responsiveness is a big indicator. Like, do they get back to you? Do you get it back to you in a timely manner? Like that right there could indicate whether this is somebody that's got attention to detail and actually cares about their clients, or maybe they're kind of just like, it's not the most important thing. I just want people to sign up. Or they're so busy that maybe they're just not focused on that client relationship like I think one would really want to be. So, even just sending that simple email or, social media ping on direct messaging, that could be challenging because a lot of people aren't spending a lot of time there, but their email is out there, or assuming it's out there. Like, they should be watching that. They should be responding. And I know for me, if I've got somebody reaching out about a workshop, like, that person is going to get as much attention as I feel that they need to answer questions in that, because I want them to feel comfortable with me and what I have to offer. If somebody doesn't show that attentiveness, then that might be a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I think also if you're going to email them, make sure that without also when you're emailing, not just the questions, but give them your concerns. If you have any doubts about where you're going, what you're doing, are you able to do, so sorry, go ahead, Jeffrey.
No, you're good. I was just going to reiterate. I think that email thing is perfect. Like, to me, that's almost one of the best things to do. Even if it's a simple question and you're just sort of checking responsiveness, like, you might be like, I'm really not super concerned what the answer here is. I'm just more concerned, do I get a response? I know, I get email inquiries, and I've had people that have chose to attend a workshop. What's the restroom situation like on a trail? Like, how's that go? And they just want to know and curious. And to me, they're probably asking a question because they have concerns and want to see responsiveness. I've hopped on phone calls with folks before for my upcoming West Virginia workshop. I had someone hit my contact form, say, hey, I have some questions on that workshop. Can you give me a call? Sure, I can give you a call. And it was about the questions that you're talking about, Barb. Like, he was wondering, is he physically capable of doing it? Because I have that one listed as a moderate to difficult. And I say, contact me, because let's talk about it and let's see where you're at, because I'd rather you be out there and be happy and successful. But I think that paying a workshop leader with an email to sort of gauge responsiveness is huge and a great tip for people considering going on a workshop.
Yeah. Well, I think,
and I will say,
oh my gosh, Jeffrey.
Let me jump in too. Well, hey, one day we'll figure out how to not cut each other off. We're only 11 episodes.
There must be a delay or something.
So the YouTube thing, I think, is big too, Barb, and it's one of the reasons I have a YouTube channel is because, people are making a big investment in a workshop, right? You talked a little earlier. They're not getting any less expensive. Especially as you progress as a photographer, you're probably starting to see you're going to spend a little more to get with the person or what you think you need to get out of it. But for me, that if they have a YouTube channel, check it out. Because I've had people say, well, what about your teaching style? And I'm like, hey, I got a whole YouTube channel. Right. You should check it out. Because if you don't like me on YouTube, you probably won't like me in person, and let's figure that out up front, because it's fine. My teaching style may not mesh with someone, and there's zero things wrong with that, but I like how the YouTube channel for me allows people to preview how I talk. I talk a little fast, but they can see how I approach instructing something. So I think that's another great tip. And to your point, even the social media, even if they don't have a YouTube channel, are they posting reels or stories that might give a glimpse into their approach when they're out in the field? It gives you that real-time thing. So I think that was another good piece of advice as you're researching a workshop from the participant perspective.
Plus, you learn a little bit about their personality. You can kind of figure out, are they high energy? Are they, average? Are they like... You're walking around the board.
Right.
Well, and Adam Gibbs is a great example of that. I mean, we've probably all, or most of us at least, have watched at least some of Adam Gibbs's videos on YouTube, and you definitely get a feel for his personality. And, he's pretty laid back, but also you can tell he's kind of goofy and silly and likes to have a good time. And, that's definitely somebody and the type of personality that I would like to go out with. He can obviously teach, but also I do want somebody that's kind of laid back and chill and not going to be like high strung and jumping all over people if they're not doing exactly what they want or whatever. So another quick thing, just it popped in my head right at that moment as I was talking, is a good question asked too is like, hey, if I attend this workshop with you, how much of it is like step-by-step guided teaching in terms of, oh, well, we're all going to put our tripods here and we're going to use these settings. And we're all going to be kind of doing the same thing versus, like, not to toot our horn, but I think the way Jeffrey and I approached it in Smoky Mountains is we would take people to a spot, we'd kind of talk through the lay of the land and the light and, kind of what types of scenes they might want to look for, but then we would kind of let them go out and do their own thing. Because to me, that's how somebody's going to really learn. It's not, okay, Barb, come over here and stick your tripod right here and nowhere else, and don't look and don't have any curiosity, and do these exact steps on the camera, and then you're going to take, quote unquote, your photo, but really it's my photo because I've told you everything to do and that's the way you're going to do it, versus letting somebody flex those creative muscles. And we would wander throughout the group and split the group up. Jeffrey would take half, I'd take half, and we were there to ask questions and check in with folks. To me, that is probably one of the biggest things to be curious about before signing up for a workshop, is that particular teaching style. Because I've definitely heard of some people attending workshops where they show up and there's no time to kind of shoot their own thing or have that curiosity. And it's very much, kind of like I said, that step-by-step guided, here's how to create this photo, versus we're going to help you learn how to make your photos better, and not just here's what I would do kind of thing.
Yeah, I've never had that kind of a situation. Yeah. And if someone told me that, the tripod would be sticking somewhere else. It would be where they
so
told me.
Note to self: if Barb attends workshop, be nice.
Be nice. No, I do that. I'll just wander off. I make sure that they can see me.
Right.
But and that's, I've never had an opportunity where they told me, here, this is the shot, take it and walk on.
I don't think that's real common, but I've talked to a few people where they had that experience on workshops, and it was certainly not what they were wanting to get at. At that point, to me, it's almost more of like a photo tour, and even probably more rigid than that, because like a tour to me would be like, hey, we're going to go places and I'll get you there and then you do your own thing. So I would come out of that feeling like I wasn't necessarily learning a whole lot. Maybe the basics of how they would do it. But again, to me, it's not about how I would do it or how Jeffrey's doing it. We can certainly share our processes, but it's, hey, how do you want to do it? And let me help you get there. So anyways, a little random thought that popped into my head as I recalled those past conversations. So let's pivot again, not shift any cogs, but let's pivot. The rest of the intent of this is really kind of talk about preparing for workshops, both mentally and physically. I think mentally is probably the bigger piece of it. And I will say I've got some insights on the mental preparation and openness that I'm not terribly proud of in terms of my own experiences as an attendee and how I would go into them from a mindset standpoint. So let's just jump into that. Barb, I would say from your viewpoint, like, is there anything you specifically have done as an attendee leading into a workshop you've signed up for? Any mantras you try to repeat in your head or anything like that in terms of showing up and making sure you are in the right headspace for learning? 'Cause, obviously a lot of us that might be attending a workshop, it might have been 20, 30 years since we were in a learning environment from a school standpoint, and, work aside. So how do you is there anything you've done specifically to kind of shift back into that mindset and make sure you're getting the most out of it?
Well, I think the fact that I'm taking a workshop means that I'm open to learn something new. Otherwise, you just go with the guy that wants you to put your tripod somewhere. I think maybe I don't have to talk myself into being open. I'm always open for something new, but I think some things to do, maybe if you arrive a day early, I know it's a physical thing, but getting there, because especially if you're traveling a long way, I've done several trips where, flown cross country, and your brain's all frazzled with the travel and the rental car and the hotel and the airline, they lost your bag or something. If you arrive a day early, you can get on site, go look around, drive around, look at the area, kind of get the feel of where you are. And I think that can get you into the right headspace for learning something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I get asked that sometimes about when should I arrive, and I always struggle with that because what you're saying, Barb, it's sometimes nice to get there if you've got the budget and time and to do it is to be there the day early because you get that transition time, and I know I typically need transition time versus, technically, can you make they'll usually tell me, I'm coming from here, and we're going there, what time are we first meeting? And I'm like, well, technically, yes, you can make that drive and get there, and probably even still have a few hours of leeway, but the question is, are you in the best headspace to do that. So I like that advice.
Yeah, if you're going into
I
it
know I get
stressed
asked
out
that
and
question.
frazzled from travel, probably not the best headspace to be in going into a learning
Right.
and creativity environment.
Or jet lagged.
Yep.
You know,
Well, and your point too, like Barb, you're in Florida. I'm in Texas. Jeffrey's at the highest elevation out of the three of us, and he's not at some super high elevation.
800 feet right here.
oh my
Hey man,
god,
you're like double me.
the nosebleeds just watching
Yeah.
you.
But using my recent Colorado trip as an example, and I did the same thing last year. Like part of the reason I made these longer trips because I knew I needed 2-3 days to just get a basic baseline acclimation to the elevation. So that's something to consider too. Is if you're flatlanders like us and you're going into a mountainous environment or even just a higher elevation environment, that's something to consider as well. Because my gosh, if I went to a workshop in Colorado today and I just tried to jump right into it, I'd probably have a massive headache and be cranky and groggy and just not feeling it. So, and even being on my own, like I said, it took me 2-3 days just to kind of feel normal-ish, and that's still nowhere. I mean, I was there for almost 2 weeks, and I was still struggling with breathing and everything. But at least you're getting some bit of an acclimation period. You're not going to have to worry about altitude sickness, hopefully, or anything like that. So that's something to consider as well. I think what's funny, and I'll speak negatively about younger Mike here for a moment, is Barb, you said well, obviously, if somebody's signing up for a workshop, they're going in with the intent to learn. Not me, not necessarily me, my friend. When I signed up, whether it was the Grand Tetons one, I did one in Colorado. Those are probably the two that come to mind specifically. Like I said, initially starting out, I was less interested in learning about the photography side and more like, hey, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get there. I don't know this hiking thing, this camping thing felt intimidating to me. So I had my mind definitely way too focused on that side of things and less so on the photography skills side. And also, I've certainly mentioned this on other interviews I've done with others or maybe on this podcast, but 2018 especially was like my cocky little bastard year. I don't know what my deal was that year, but I was a few years into the photography side of things, and I just thought I was hot shit. I knew everything I needed to know. And again, I think I've talked about tripods are stupid, low light. You just jack that ISO up and you're good to go. And people don't know, they're too picky, blah, 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 blah. So I really went into those two workshops in particular and looking back on it, embarrassingly cocky about my photography skills and my technical skills and my composition. Like everything was just, I look back at that older work and now I have that, benefit of age and wisdom and reflection to say, dude, you're a bit of an ass, and you weren't going into it with the right mindset. And that would be, to me, the biggest thing is if you're like younger Mike from 7-8 years ago, whatever it was, if you're thinking about a workshop, yes, it was beneficial to me to kind of get the ropes of camping and hiking and safety in nature and blah, 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 all that stuff. Yeah, sure. I learned a lot from that regard. But yeah, a photography workshop is supposed to be about photography learning. So if you go into it with this kind of ego built up around your own ability, which I think a lot of people kind of hit at year 2 or 3 of photography, of you kind of hit that comfort zone, you're way better than you were when you first started out and you didn't know, how to operate the camera. And you get this false sense of competency. And in my case, it was, I don't like saying this about myself, but it was arrogance. Like, I know just as much as these leaders and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's cringeworthy thinking back on it. So I'll throw myself under the bus though, 'cause like that is probably the worst attitude you could take going into a workshop, is thinking that you don't have anything to learn and just taking that kind kind
I actually did something similar.
Oh, good. It's not just
the one I did in Savannah. I wrote to them because these people did like little tours, walking tours, and for people with cell phone, but it's based on photography. And I wrote and I said, listen, I don't want to be with people that barely know how to turn their camera on. I know the exposure triangle. I was into it maybe a year and a half. When I did want to learn different things, but I wasn't as bad, and I know everything. But I definitely I don't want nothing to do with any beginners, just me. So that was the private.
Yeah.
It worked out, but yeah. And I did learn a lot, because they were walking around there. That's actually, I don't know if I told you that this is where I learned more to zoom in on the finer, smaller details.
There you go.
And it dawned on me when I was going back looking for some images. I said, oh, yeah, I forgot about that workshop. And it was a city tour, so it wasn't nature. But he was like, oh, well, here we are in this old cemetery. But look at this fence. Look at this little ornate little design thing. And I never thought that. So I did learn something. But the rest of it, I'm like,
yeah. I think I learned more, again, after like that self-reflection period after the fact, and like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should have listened a little bit more, asked some more questions, and been more open to that learning aspect. And when I did a workshop in 2019, that's the approach I did take, is like, hey, and even at that time, I was feeling far more confident in my own abilities. And I've said before, like 2019, I feel was the year where my photography really took a big step forward. But I took a workshop in August of that year, and I was much more open-minded in terms of, hey, I want to go in and see what I can actually learn to drive that further improvement. And certainly something like out of Yosemite, where it was more of a conference, there were field sessions, but you also had classroom sessions that, I signed up for it because Yosemite was a bucket list location, but also I knew I would have this great opportunity to learn and absorb and just be steeped in all of this experience and knowledge from so many different instructors. And if I'd gone into that one with the cocky, like, I know everything, and, I don't know why you guys are pros, you've only been doing it for 30 years, I got this. It would have been a totally wasted opportunity. So, like I said, I'll finish throwing myself under the bus on that one, but it was kind of a shameful background on my standpoint. Jeffrey, were you better than me in that regard in terms of your openness to learning?
I feel like I have a fairly learning mindset, which I think is important. I think you sometimes have to keep it in check. Well, I know how to do this, but and maybe it's because I have a very technical background where I kept learning that, okay, people always know more than me, even when I think I understand something. And I would always be surprised through that. So I suspect I went through a lot of my growing pains through that. But I think that learning mindset is just so important, because even if you're going over a technique that you think you've mastered, focus stacking, say you think you've got it, but you're at a workshop and the leader's doing it slightly different for some reason, like, it's a good chance to ask, why do you do it that way? What are you getting from it? And then after the workshop, if you are a very experienced photographer, you might decide, no, I'm going to stick with my way. But I think if you understand why this person was doing it this way, why you do it this way, even if you stick with your way, there can be value to that. So, but yeah, either way, I 100% think going into a workshop, you're spending a lot of money. Someone might teach something a little different than what you're used to. And instead of rebelling against it, listen to it. And acknowledge it and ask questions by all means. If I'm doing something different than how you do it, ask me questions. That's what we're here for. We can go back and forth. And with some more advanced photographers, we'll even have a good discussion on pros and cons. And they're equally capable of, here's pros and cons for what I think you're doing, and here's my pros and cons for what they're doing. But that discussion, I think, as you hit this more advanced level or intermediate level, there's still stuff to learn in those nooks and crannies of things. So I think, being prepared with an open learning mindset, not being Michael in 2017, is probably a good idea.
So it's funny, back in the day, this is going, oh my gosh, this is almost 15 years ago, but when I was in a different role with the same company, my employees had a joke that I eventually found out about of WWMD, what would Michael do? And it's like they would come to me with questions, especially it was more of a customer service oriented thing. And like, well, what do you think you should do? What do you think I'm going to tell you to do? Take care of the customer, blah, blah, blah. So they had this, but in the terms of my 2017, 2018, it'd be asking yourself, what would Michael do? And then do the exact opposite, because Michael's an idiot. So let's stop talking about 2018, Michael. The other thing,
let's get to current Michael,
the nicer, more humble Michael.
Yes.
The other thing I would say, though, is beyond being open to the learning aspect, I do think it's important to be open to the overall experience of the workshop as well, because you may be thrust into an environment, obviously by your choice, but for somebody that doesn't have an experience in nature or with off-roading, and suddenly you're being led down these rough mountain roads or whatever the case may be, it can be very jarring and like culture shock. If you're a city person and you're thrown into the mountains because you want to have that experience and you want to learn that side of photography, that environmental experience can be a big challenge mentally as well. And I was just talking to somebody in Colorado that relayed a story about somebody that was attending a workshop, and even though they had preparatory calls where they talked about, hey, we're going to be in vehicles going off-road on rough roads, and we're going to be doing some hiking, and et cetera, like it's all laid out on the website. It was all laid out in the calls with the attendees leading up to the workshop. There was an attendee who, after one outing where they were going up a really rough road, and it's kind of sort of a shelf road, the attendee came to the workshop leaders afterwards and said, hey, I think I'm going to go home. And, they talked him into staying. And it ended up being that at the end of the workshop, he went from, oh my God, this is way too much. This isn't what I was expecting. I can't handle this, to it was one of the best experiences he's had in his life, because he toughed through it. And it's that you're scared and uncertain or leery of what's new and different. And certainly something like going up a steep, rough mountain road. And I know the road that they were going up, and it's not the worst by far, but I can see that somebody that isn't used to that would be a little freaked out. But they pushed through it upon further reflection, and they ended up having this fantastic experience. So that's a big part of it too, is going into an environment that you may not be familiar with and being open to whether it's the physical challenges of it, or maybe overcoming a little bit of fear or trepidation or anxiety and pushing through it. And you might find yourself, just like this gentleman ended up having one of the best experiences of their life. So there's that piece of it as well. So set aside the ego. And then a lot of it too is, we've kind of talked about it from a standpoint of being open-minded going in, and having the curiosity and asking questions. But also when you do receive feedback, and this is a life skill more than just a photography side of things, but for some people it can be very difficult to be open to feedback. For me personally, I've got the type of personality and mental framework that, whether it's through my career or now in photography or whatever, if I get feedback, my brain just kind of goes into this, not fight or flight, but just kind of defensive posture very quickly. And I want to defend my decisions or why I did it this way. Or again, I kind of go to that default of like, you don't really know what you're talking about. I think, I'm going to just do what I'm doing here. So some of the best advice I had gotten, again, oh my gosh, I need to stop thinking about dates. 20 plus years ago now. Anyways, too long ago, was feedback is a gift. And I really, like, if I find myself getting that kind of like self-preservation, defensive, like I'm going to put on my armor and you're not going to tell me that this isn't, quite up to snuff, or I could have done it better or whatever. If I find myself going down that path, I try to repeat that mantra, like, hey, dude, how many times have you told employees in the past that feedback is a gift? Be open to it. This is to help you improve and help you be better. It's no different than workplace than it is when you're on a workshop or in a learning environment from photography or anything else, is being open to that. And the other note I jotted down here was from one of my last bosses I had towards the end of my time with my employer, that she always preached, assume positive intent. And Jeffrey, you've seen me espouse this on the Discord server as well, when people get in these debates around feedback on images and unsolicited feedback and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I was working in a fairly challenging environment in terms of personalities and some lack of responsiveness and follow through and things like that. And I was getting myself frustrated, and that assume positive intent piece was kind of my mantra in that regard. And that goes with feedback too, is like, ideally, if somebody's teaching a workshop, they're not giving you feedback to attack you. It's assume positive intent. They're doing it to help you improve your skills and grow and be more creative, more curious. All the things we've talked about so far on this podcast and elsewhere, it's not where my mental wiring tends to go of, again, that defensive posture. I need to protect myself. So those are kind of my two mantras in terms of receiving feedback. It's a gift, and assume positive intent. It's coming from a well-intended, good place, and receive it as such. So I'll open the floor to the two of you as well if you have any thoughts around feedback and embracing growth. But that's something I again will readily admit it's always been a challenge for me. Is not becoming overly defensive of whatever it may be that I'm getting feedback on.
I don't have a problem with feedback.
I suck.
When when I first got into photography, it was with a camera club, and I love my club, and one of the guides in there was also part of this other club that 20 miles away, and I ended up joining that, and they actually had competition, and he was one of the judges, and he said no photo is ever perfect. Mm-hmm. Nothing is ever perfect. There is always something that you can do to improve on it. It may be, a little bit of light. It may be an imperfection. It may be color cast. Whatever it is, there's always room to perfect it. And he said, and if you think that there isn't, then that deserves 100%. And I said, well, that's not right. But so I have that in my mind that no matter what I do, there's always something that could be better about it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm there to learn from somebody, I'm going to definitely take what they tell me. I did get one critique back when we did the Out of Oregon, and I'm not going to say who did it, but it was and it wasn't mean or rude, but what she said, and I thought, well, that's your opinion, and I accepted it, and I'm like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I kept it the way it was because I liked it that way, and it wasn't anything, oh, you forgot that dust spot or there was a branch sticking in. It was just, something on her opinion of how she would like it done. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, it's okay. That's fine. And you got to know when to accept it and when to, mm-hmm. Know yourself and know this is what I want.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
And the other person that was saying, I wouldn't listen to her.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'm more akin to you, Michael, on the feedback. I got to fight a defensive instinct on feedback, which is crazy, right? But I sort of have to mentally prepare. So, like, if I'm in the Discord and put something in image critique, I've prepared myself for it, and then I'm super receptive. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's certainly I definitely have to fight that defensive instinct, which is terrible. It's like you said, feedback's a gift, and to Barb's point, no photo is perfect, and I know mine are far from perfect. So I should be more receptive to opening up to criticism and critique of it, because, like I said, I think so. Especially if you're asking for critique, I think it's majority of the time coming from a positive intent, mm-hmm. right? They're not there to trash your photo. They're there to try to help you. And like Barb said, there's no way the photo is perfect, no matter who you are. So, the two go together. It should be a completely positive experience. But yeah, I agree with you, Michael. For me, it's unfortunately, even to this day, sort of take a breath. Mm-hmm. They're trying to help me, not rip my photo to shreds type situation. So it's got a positive intent. Yeah. But yeah, I admit that's one I struggle with too. I have to be very conscious about receiving feedback and put myself in the right mindset for it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like
way more often than I want to admit.
I don't know why I struggle with it. It's, I think, looking at my siblings, it's probably, maybe it's inherited. It's like, I don't know. I think we all kind of have the same challenge in that regard. It's just being conscious of it. And that kind of goes, again, to the mental preparation going into workshop. Like, I know that's a problem of mine. I need to set that aside and, just let myself go in with an open mind and an open heart and go at it. Were you going to chime in, Barb?
Yeah. A lot of it with critiques, it could something be real simple that can be fixed in post-processing. Mm-hmm. How many times have you looked at an image and you stared at it, and it's glaring you in the face, but you don't see it because you're worried about that leaf or that rock, and you're not thinking about another one, and someone just points out something very simple. Yep. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed that, or I can't believe I didn't see that color cast. Thanks for pointing it out. And when you start looking at it, you're like, oh.
It sounds like you've talked to David Thompson with the times you've mentioned color cast.
I've done 7 critique sessions with Eric Bennett, and Friends.
Oh, okay. You did that. That's
7.
right. Yeah, those series he was running.
Yeah. So that was just nailed, and I'm horrible at color because now I'm better. I'm more detailed where I put in my colors, and I'll just do it globally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's something that if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And if you don't want to accept critique, then you're going to constantly make the same mistakes.
Yeah. You touched on a couple things too, Barb, that I think are important, and this is something that when I've done image critiques or portfolio critiques for folks in the past, one of the first things I start off in my coaching or introduction session is my word is not gospel. You need to learn. There's a difference between technical critique, right? Like, oh, you missed that dust spot or your horizon's crooked or whatever, versus the creative critique. And knowing when to stand your ground. And again, I've talked about it somewhere. I don't recall where in the past years, but Heather, my fiance, she was an art major. And one of the things they had to do as part of that is defend their work. Ironically, as we talk about not being defensive, but learning to take that critique, but knowing when to stand your ground on your creative vision and what you want to have as the end realization of that vision. So, yeah, we could sit down and I could look at work of yours, Barb, and say, this X, Y, and Z isn't how I would prefer to see it or whatever. You would be fully in your place and frankly, from my viewpoint, encourage that if that isn't aligned, what I'm telling you isn't aligned with what you want to get out of the image and the creative vision of it, you don't have to tell me to shut up, but like, hey, I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the input. I'll take that into consideration, and then you move on. I've done that with, sending collections of new work, whether it be for my ebooks or whatever, and asking for input on whether it be, editing tweaks or culling images out of it to whittle it down a little bit. And there's been plenty of times where I've had somebody like, oh, I really don't like that image. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite images. You're out of your mind. And I appreciate it, but I'm going to ignore that one. So I think that's important. And then the other thing is the pursuit of perfection that I see a lot of photographers, and it's probably something more that's come about with the digital age because we've got so many tools at our disposal to have clean files and pristine sharpness and everything. But there's another saying that I try to embrace because I have been guilty of the perfectionism gene as well. But don't let perfect be the enemy of great / don't let perfect be the enemy of done. And Jeffrey, again, you may recall this on the Discord server, Barb. I know you're not in there quite as much, but I shared a while back that years and years and years ago, I used to drive by my middle school every day on the way to work. And of course, they had the little marquee out front that would have coming events or whatever, or motivational sayings. And one of the sayings one week, all week, drove by it 5 days, was good enough never is. And I lived by that mantra for probably 2 decades. And I joked on the Discord server, like, hey, that probably drove some of my employees absolutely insane. It's like, yeah, that's great, but let's make it better. But certainly from a creativity standpoint too, like, or just as a person that's running their own business, like sometimes you just got to get it done. Like perfect is never going to happen. And that goes for the results of your photography as well. And I've got images in my portfolio that certainly aren't perfect. There might be a section that's a little bit out of focus because of depth of field challenges, or it's a little noisier than what would be the quote unquote ideal in the world today, especially with all the AI denoising tools and that. But during that Grand Teton workshop, one of the things we did was we, as a group, went to Thomas Mangelson's gallery in Jackson, and we toured it. And one of the things that struck me most, and especially there's the one photo of his with the bear at, I can't remember the falls, that start with a K. I want to say Calmatis, but I don't think that's right. But anyways, it's the bear, and like the fish is leaping into the bear's mouth, and it's just like perfectly got just a little bit of an air gap between the edge of the bear's mouth and the fish, so the fish is nicely outlined and everything. And for I don't know how long it's been, we'll just say years, that's been considered like one of the best wildlife photos, especially because I think it was taken on film. But you look at it in person, and it's grainy as hell. It's a little bit soft. The focus isn't tack sharp, but it's revered as this fantastic photo. And a lot of his images that were absolutely beautiful, especially at quote unquote normal viewing distance and not putting your nose up next to them like we're all guilty of at times, were absolutely fantastic but flawed in some way, shape, or form, whether it be not perfect sharpness, maybe noisy because they were shot on film and you just had those limitations. So I think going in a workshop as well is hopefully you're not with somebody who's trying to teach you how to be perfect, but rather how to just improve and be better, but not striving for that perfection, because to each their own. But there's people out there that'll spend hours and hours and hours in post-processing in Photoshop trying to make something perfect, as opposed to just embracing the flaws that in their own right might make it beautiful still. So, yeah, my little side rant on, or not rant, but side tangent on that as well.
No, I've got an image. It wasn't from a workshop. It was a camera club event. And we were on our way to this trail, and it was fog. We very rarely get fog here. So on the way, and I'm in the car, and I'm running late, and I couldn't not take this photo. So I pulled the camera out, and I'm in the car, and I'm shot, of course, handheld, low light, and I took 2 shots, and then I moved on. And the other one wasn't a very good. The second one the composition wasn't great. I moved or whatever. But that one that I loved, and it was out of focus. I don't know, either that or I moved the camera because I was in a running car. And I said, I'm not getting rid of it. So I just I did the negative clarity, negative texture, made it soft as hell, and it looks great. It looks perfect like that. And I got so many compliments on it when I posted it to Instagram. I'm like, Jesus, you have no idea how bad this photo really is. But if it's something that you really like, you can always do something.
Right. Well, and the irony of my being kind of on default of defensive to feedback is I am by far my own worst critic. And I'd like to say that in my almost 30-year career, I didn't have many times where I'd have a sit down with my boss and go over a performance issue or anything with them. But the couple times that it did happen, one of the first things I'd say is like, anything you tell me is not going to be anything I haven't told myself 10 times over. So like, let's have at it. Not that we were fighting, but you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you're going to come at me with that I haven't beat myself up way worse already, knowing the circumstances. So anywho's, we've kind of touched on the physical aspect of it and kind of pushing through. Barb, have you ever run into that, or even just sleep deprivation? I know Jeffrey and I kind of had some feedback on our Smoky Mountains workshop around that. Any insights on that, and kind of prepping yourself and reminding yourself to kind of keep pushing and get through it for the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely, you're going to be miserable physically.
There's a soundbite coming from that one.
Listen to Shutter Nonsense. You're going to be miserable.
You're going to be miserable. No, it's not miserable. Okay, strong word. I tend to over-exaggerate.
But sometimes it can be absolutely miserable. So
it can be. Yeah. I mean, I pulled a Marco one time going down a mountain or whatever. I call it a mountain. It could have just been something stupid. But, anything bigger than 100 feet is a mountain to me. But, what was I getting at now? Oh, yeah, the sleep deprivation. And if you're used to being, if you're like me or what you guys, I don't know what you do in your other working life, but I'm at a desk, obviously. And if you go out and you're used to being there, if you go on the weekends, so you got a couple days, maybe you're out shooting, but then you go on a workshop 3 to 5 days, maybe longer. You're out every day, all day. And if you're not used to that, yeah, absolutely, it's going to take a toll. So I would recommend to any time you get any downtime, try to take a nap, or even if you can't sleep, I'm not good at sleeping, taking naps. So I just lay down, even just to be still, no phones, just be quiet, 20 minutes, and you'd be surprised how much that can lift you back up.
Yep. Yeah, and that was, again, some not really feedback, but just kind of, I think, in the moment, more than anything with the workshop Jeffrey and I led earlier this year, is day by day, you could kind of see that progression of people getting more and more tired, especially as we would meet up for the afternoon and evening sunset sessions or whatever, and see people kind of just getting out of their vehicles slower or not being quite as enthusiastic, and yeah, it's tough. I mean, that that Grand Teton workshop. Every workshop I've done has been tough. That Grand Teton one was by far. I mean, we were doing Milky Way, we were doing sunrise, we were doing sunset. I mean, I think the day that we did that super, super, super hard hike, I think we got up at 3:30 that morning to go out for it. So it's, I guess, partly just reminding yourself that this is what you signed up for, and take the opportunity to get the most out of it. And again, like, at times, I was miserable and I was grumpy and kind of hating life in the midst of it in the moment. But now I look back on it as, oh, what a great experience. That was so much fun. And, like I said, I learned about myself too, that, hey, I was approaching 40 and I could go out and do something this physical and challenging that I'd never done before. And, maybe it took me twice as long as the other people, but I did it. It's just, I don't want to say you have to go in with like a tough mindset. But there's a little bit of that. And I guess ultimately, like, if you get to a point where you're just feeling so exhausted, just talk to the workshop leaders and, hey, I think I'm going to hang back this session. Or, if you're out shooting, like, hey, is it cool if I go back and rest in the car or whatever? Like, still know your limits, but also take advantage of being there as much as you can, and just understand that most workshops, it's going to be pretty tiring, because as leaders, we're wanting to stuff as much as is reasonable into it as well. And, people show up wanting to do sunrise, wanting to do sunset, and maybe not necessarily thinking that, oh, that means maybe I'm getting 6 hours of sleep a night, and, I'm pushing myself much harder physically than I'm used to. So it's kind of sleep deprivation on top of extra physical exertion, and it just kind of all comes to a head. But I think that's something definitely to be cognizant of going into a workshop, eyes wide open kind of as well.
And I think another one is if you're doing that. I'm sorry, Jeffrey.
No, you're good.
We're going to title this episode "Jeffrey Tries to Talk."
Was Jeffrey here? To take care of yourself when you're doing this. Don't how many times it's the old adage? What are you going to eat when you're grabbing crap from the gas station? You're grabbing, soda and coffee just to stay awake. But I think if now I don't know where you all are camping. If you're camping or if you're in a hotel, try to at least do something good for yourself, and that will at least help with the physical part. Yeah. I think.
Jeffrey, you may speak.
No, I think that's it. I think the key thing with that is to realize, as a participant, you're probably not alone. The others are probably tired, starting to run that sleep deprivation. I mean, when we're in the Smokies, the Smokies is a big place, and though we stayed on the quiet side, the good sunrise sunset spots, you're like an hour drive to get there. So if you're trying to do a good sunrise and a good sunset, your days get long, because you're getting up crazy early to be there by sunrise. And then if you go back for sunset, I mean, the one night we got caught behind a slow driver and a lot of fog and stuff, and it probably added 20 minutes to our return trip to get back to where we're staying. And, but the way I look at it, and it's, as an instructor, I do it because I figure people are paying, they want to see this stuff, and this is part of what comes with it. As a participant, I think Barb's advice, get that nap if you're a napper, get that nap when you can. If you're not a napper, just chill out. Don't look at a screen. Just relax for a little bit to sort of get that reset. I know when I do workshops, I try to build in a small gap in the middle of the day for people to, hey, you're probably tired of hearing me talk and everything. So I try to build that in, and I recommend people take advantage of it. From that standpoint. But yeah, I think it's not necessarily a tough mindset, but just be prepared that, and last point, to again recap on what Barb said, that food, I've learned to try to warn people about food. Have some food with you. I know I bring snacks for folks, and try to make it more than just a Three Musketeers bar or something, but something will actually give you some nutrition, because you're running yourself ragged, or you're drinking more caffeine than normal, and you need something to counterbalance that. So I do try to prepare people. And as a participant, listen to that advice, and bring some healthy food to snack on to keep those energy levels up, because you're going to need it. But yeah, that's a really great point on being prepared for that aspect of things.
So I'm having to hold back my laughter here, going back to what would Michael do and do the opposite. In Colorado, you don't even want to know how many bags of powdered donuts I went through in 12 days. I think I went through like
That's
4
terrible.
bags. I don't know what it is.
Don't do what Michael does.
I don't know what it
Don't
is
do
with these
that.
photography trips. I just like, I have to have my powdered donuts. It used to be Fritos. Now it's powdered donut. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, it was.
While you're getting your powdered donuts, grab yourself a couple of hard-boiled eggs and be done with it.
I had apples too, so there was that. And all my eggs broke in my fridge on the first or second day, so I didn't have eggs, and I was afraid to replace them and just go through having to clean up yolk again. So powdered donuts it was for breakfast. Sue me. All right, so we're a little over an hour on our recording session here. So I think a great way to kind of wind this down, at least from my perspective, is talking about the social and community aspects and the relationships that can come out of workshops, because that is probably, regardless of the places I've been and the things I've experienced and what I've learned, probably the most amazing thing to me is, especially for somebody that tends to be pretty introverted and it's harder to make friends as you get older, blah, 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 pull out my tiny violin and play a sad song. But there's people that I went on that 2018 workshop and the leaders that I still keep in touch with. And that's the case for pretty much every workshop I've been on. And now with Jeffrey, just hit my microphone, with Jeffrey and leading the workshop in the Smoky Mountains, like you build a special bond. It's kind of like that Band of Brothers. Like, you've been through hell and back, and now you've got this forged bond.
You've been miserable together
Right.
now.
Right. And collectively, maybe, like I said, you want to murder the workshop leader or leaders, but you've got this big bond with the other participants because you all want to murder them, and you forged a friendship.
Or another participant.
Or another
Yeah.
participant. I've been there too. Like, oh my God. Can you believe
Oh, boy,
so?
yep.
So
Did I say?
I think, Barb, just from your reaction, I think you're on the same boat, and I'm guessing, Jeffrey, you are too, but attending a workshop from a social aspect, and we've talked in the past too about how, hey, this nature photography thing, especially if you're trying to do it full time, it can be kind of a lonely road, because it's not like going to an office or having daily meetings with coworkers or whatever. But going on a workshop, you're likely to come out of it with at least one new, if not several new friends, or at least very, very strong relationships that you're always going to have that shared experience with them. And even if it's 10 years later, you can reach out to somebody randomly like, hey, Peter, you remember that one time on the workshop when blah, 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 and you kind of have that reminiscing and going back on it. So again, Barb, I'll toss it to you, or Jeffrey. I'm assuming you've had similar experiences and outcomes from these things.
I wouldn't say I've got really good friends out of them, but I'm definitely still connected with pretty much, especially the Out of Chicago one. Those were, we met some really great people, and there was one that was in our group. She remembered me from Out of Chicago Live, and I said, oh my God! So every day she'd come over to my little tent because she was off site. We did a ball, and we still keep in touch. There's a couple others that I keep in touch with, and because everybody, you follow each other. You're on Instagram. Oh, let me follow you. Now, I did meet a real friend at not a workshop, but a conference at the Outsiders. That first one, I was by myself. She was by herself. I needed to play something out. And then anybody said, no. Well, all of a sudden, we started talking. We had so much in common. And, we've taken Out of Chicago workshops together and, other things. So, yeah, you can definitely make friends. You all have something in common, at least one
Right.
thing. You love photography.
Hopefully.
You love the subject matter. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can't say like I've gotten like, oh, this is my new best friend scenario, but like you said, like you've got people that you're always going to have that connection with, and maybe you don't talk daily, weekly, or monthly, but every now and then you'll chime in on something they've posted, or they chime in on yours, or you just think of something randomly, and I've done that with the workshop leaders from the Grand Teton one. Again, I keep going back to, but something will pop up in my Facebook memories where I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. I got to message so-and-so and just needle them a little bit or remind them again. Like I've told the workshop leaders time and time again, like there's almost not a day that goes by that I haven't thought about that workshop and the experiences that came out of it. And, we're not too far off from 10 years on, and still to this day, maybe not every day now, but still several times a week, there's something that comes to mind about that workshop. And I can think back fondly on it. And yeah, Jeffrey and a couple of the attendees for our workshop were friends that have done a couple of years together, right? Or at least acquaintances.
Yeah, it's really cool. A good chunk of our Smokies participants had done my West Virginia workshop, and just from the very beginning in West Virginia, no one really knew each other. But by the end of that workshop, everyone's joking around with each other. People learn people's little quirks and stuff, and we're all giving a little bit of hard time to them. But it's really cool to see how that group bonded, and then a lot of them signed up for the Smokies workshop I did, and I didn't necessarily tell them all that it was, wow, we got a lot of overlap from the West Virginia workshop, but it was almost like a reunion.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how much they kept in touch out of workshops, but you could definitely tell they gelled in West Virginia because in the Smokies, the group came together really well. We did have a person that was not from that original group, and they brought her into the group really well. And so I think it's a great closing point is workshops can be all about photography education, going to cool places, learning field craft and all that. But the community aspect of just, like Michael said, photography, whether you're doing it as a hobby or a business, is sort of a solo endeavor. You've got camera clubs to go to here and there, but embrace that community when you get the opportunity in a workshop where you're experiencing it. I want to say critical mass, I guess, because workshops are intensive. At that intensity, just bring that community level up a bit. So yeah, don't underestimate that for workshops. I think if you're someone considering one or looking to go, you might pull that out of it as well.
Yeah. Good stuff. So kind of wrap it or wind it down here. Barb, any last thoughts or words of wisdom, something you wish everybody would consider or think about heading into a workshop, whatever it may be? Any final words?
Just with the way I started, do your due diligence. Know what you're getting into. Know, and don't just slip, it'll be fine, and prepare. I think there was one of the questions in your little thing that was about what would you do to prepare for a workshop. I have lists. I'm one of those terribly anal preparers, planners, packers, and I'll work myself into a frenzy until everything is ready to go. I have a checklist for camping, checklist for going on a long trip for 2 weeks, checklist for weekend trips, hotel trips, so I don't want to forget anything. The last thing you want to do is get somewhere and realize you forgot your tripod. You forgot, I went to Paris in 2019 and my ride came to take me to the airport. She was early and my brand new travel tripod was still sitting on my bed. And I bought it just for that. And so, yeah, be sure that you've got everything. Oh, one thing another we didn't talk about, we didn't want to talk about gear, but having a backup if you go on a workshop. The two out of Chicago's that I did, they even recommended, they said, listen, you're spending a lot of money, and the last thing you want is when you're out shooting, if something malfunctions in your camera, what are you going to do? You just spent all this money, you're not going to be able to do anything. So I've rented, I go on Lens Rentals or whatever rental company you like, and I'll just rent the exact same camera that I own. Well, now I don't need to because I got a second camera, but at the time I didn't. And I had it delivered to the hotel I was staying at. And then when I was done, I didn't even open it up. I just shipped it back. Yeah. But if you need it, it's there, and it's $100.
That's a great point, yeah.
Yeah, anything that I've had a lens go out of me, not at a workshop, but out west. I mean, you can't shoot. Oh, Valley of Fire, I had a long lens go out of me.
Not the
I'm
long
still
ones.
traumatized. My 100-400 died. I mean, yeah. That was tragic.
That's when you go to the workshop leader's like, I'm going home.
I was by myself, so I had to complain to myself. And then I quick ordered something from Lens Rentals that I could figure out.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a backup, if for a camera especially, you can get away with lens, but yeah.
I mean, you need at least one lens, but yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, most people do. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I know the one workshop I did with my friend Jason, you talk about community. We were all the same camera club, all the attendees. We were all just friends. But he brought along extra lenses, and if we had the same camera, he would let us use them.
And depending on the workshop leader, if they've got the means, they may have backup bodies or lenses. I've seen some where they're an ambassador for like Tamron or whatever, and Tamron will work with them and have lenses that you can try out as part of the workshop and stuff like that. And I'd say that's again something maybe to ask up front. And I think that's probably something you're more likely to see with the bigger workshop leaders like Munch or out of Chicago, maybe, especially those where you've got so many workshop leaders to participant ratios. But for somebody like me or Jeffrey or whomever starting out that's just doing it on their own, that might be a little bit of a stretch. So that's something that maybe you could ask about too. And your point about renting a spare body going into it is a great one. I never even really thought about that. And even if you don't do the same body, but just keep the same, like, I've got a Canon R5, so I'm going to get a Canon R6, just something that you've got as a backup so you can still learn and come away with some good photos. And these days, even a lower end body is still going to serve you pretty well. So that was a great point on that aspect too. Jeffrey, any last words of wisdom?
No, I mean, I know we consciously kept it non-gear focused, but I think Barb's right. I know I send packing lists or checklists to participants to cover the basics. I think as you get more advanced, there's probably extras you want to bring, but yeah, being prepared gear-wise with, extra batteries, memory cards, all of that's important. Hopefully the workshop leader is prompting some of that ahead of time so that you can ask them questions or be better prepared. But I do think that's an important part, is to make sure your gear's functional, ready to go. And I do like that lens rentals idea. I've rented from them before. And it can be a low-cost insurance policy, right? Like, it's not that expensive to rent a body from them to take with you, and it pretty much nearly guarantees you'll be good if you don't happen to have a second camera body. And if you're putting all that time and money and into travel and the workshop itself, it could be a cheap insurance policy to do. So, yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, I'm not going to share any last words of wisdom heading into it. I think we've covered it pretty well between the three of us. But I do need to remember, because I forgot to do it at the beginning, to give a shout out for our latest Patreon supporter. Let me make sure I'm going in here and not missing anybody else. But a huge shout out and thank you and star-eyed wonderment at the support of Ben Horn as our latest paid Patreon supporter. So thank you, Ben.
Yes, thanks, Ben.
Making a slight dent in all the money I've given you over the years as a Patreon supporter. So. But no, it's always exciting to see the name of somebody you really respect and appreciate as a photographer coming and supporting us. So again, winding this down, if you want to join the conversation and be a participant in the post-episode discussions, Barb, you and I have been going back and forth quite a bit on Patreon over episode 6, and was it James that chimed in? Somebody else chimed in. We've had a pretty lively discussion on episode 6 for whatever reason. You can be part of the conversation. Just become a free member if you're not ready to make a monthly pledge. If you do want to make a monthly pledge, it starts at only $3 a month. If you do $5 or more through the end of the year, at least you're going to get early access to all episodes going forward, and would certainly appreciate it in terms of helping cover the cost associated with doing this. Otherwise, Jeffrey, let's put our heads together on the idea we had in terms of talking about our. Oh, look at that! Barb just showed off our Shutter Nonsense.
She got
stickers.
a sticker.
Yeah, so you'll get a sticker if you make a monthly pledge as well. So, and there's now one at like 12,000 feet in Colorado at Cinnamon Pass. So, if you're out there and going over Cinnamon Pass, you can look for the Shutter Nonsense sticker. But anyways, just huge thanks to everybody that has supported us. Join the conversation over on Patreon, free or paid or not. And I'm totally rambling. Jeffrey, let's put our heads together on the idea I threw out there before we started recording.
Yeah,
and
I think that
might be
idea.
Another little perk for Patreon supporters to look forward to in the near future. So, I'm out of words to say and thoughts, and my brain is melting down. So let's just stop this. Say your goodbyes.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I screwed up my outing again. Bye-bye.